Hi, it's Lerald, and this is the strategy I've been using in Settler League to farm XP relatively quickly and very smoothly. It's super simple, it's cheap, it's easy, and you can do it with any build. I finally found the time to finish leveling my Slayer to 100 last night. I should have done this like months ago, but I've just been busy with one thing or another, or power outage or whatever over the last like 6 weeks, so this is when I finally had time to do it. And I was pulling in over 50 million XP per hour just from level 99 to 100 while doing super duper simple content and only spending like 5 or 6 chaos per map on Scarabs. Now there's potential that this strategy might be removed in future leagues. You know, the strategy I used in the past where I was getting more like 200 million XP per hour in that same range with the Domination Scarab of Teachings in Necropolis, that was removed. But I think this one feels a lot less abusive, like a lot less abusive than that, so I kind of doubt it will be in future leagues. And given that today's announcement about PoE 2 being pushed back by another 3 weeks, which I'm fine with, right? You know, I'll take it whenever they want to put it out, and I would rather wait a couple weeks and have it be good than have it come out and just not be playable. But with all that being said, this league might run a little long, so this might be a strategy that even if it does get changed in the next league, you might still get a couple more months of use out of this strategy. I guess we'll see, but I do think this is a good strategy idea to bank away for future leagues either way. So as always, let's get into it, but first, you gotta like and subscribe. Alright, so about XP, I have pulled up the wiki page on experience, and it is wildly long. There is so much complexity in here. And the bottom line for like, there's so many things to expand where you can get these nice long explanations of safe zones and explanations of like, you know, there's a lot of info here, and it's cool that people have dissected the game to that point. But the basic idea is killing guys gives experience, dying loses experience. That's pretty much it. To go into more detail though, you do get less XP per monster as you level up, and you need more XP per level as you level up. So there's kind of two things happening at once. You're getting less XP per kill on monsters of a given level, usually like level 83 once you're in the 90s, and then you're also, of course, needing more XP. So this is just like the very basic graph displaying, oh, it doesn't even get any bigger. Awesome. The rate at which the amount of XP you need to level up increases. It's pretty substantial. If you just look at the 90 to 100 range on leveling, going from 99 to 98 is about 47 or 48% of that total 90 to 100 grind. It's less than half as long as a grind from 98 to 100. I think 99 to 100 is like 31% of the total grind, which does mean that 90 to 99 is 69%, which is nice. This is exacerbated by the death penalty. You lose a full 10% of a level if you die while in maps. You can't de-level. Thankfully, this isn't like Diablo 2, but it's obviously not great to die. It means that those last 2 levels are actually way longer than just half of the leveling process, and like way slower than that road to getting to level 98. This is because they're not only, I mean, just literally longer even if you never die, but the odds are also pretty decent if you're not playing hardcore that you will die in those last 2 levels, and that death penalty is so much larger. Basically, it means you get, with the way that like leveling XP goes down as you level up, you need something like 4 times as many kills from 99 to 100 as you do from like, I think 93 to 94, or maybe 94 to 95. So if you're pulling in 50 million XP per hour at 99, doing that exact same strategy, if you're doing it exactly as quickly at 94 or so, you would be getting about 200 million XP. And then substantially more if you're like level 90 or even in the 80s. So with all of that XP info dump aside, I prefer an XP strategy that is simple and easy and poses relatively low risk of death over one that has a higher potential XP per hour, but that's just me. There are some strategies out there that can take some of what I'm doing and combine it with like Breach, for example, and get closer to maybe 80 or even 100 million XP per hour. At least that's what I've heard, but they're a little bit more involved. So this does mean that this strategy that I used is not the absolute fastest method possible. It's pretty fast, but there is still room to get more XP per hour if you're willing to be a bit risky. I think that layering Delirium or Beyond onto this strategy works pretty easily. You could also do Breach or Harbinger. Like I said, Breach definitely can work. It's something I've used in past leagues for XP gains, and it's good, but it is definitely less useful for all builds. There are a lot of builds that just don't do Breach very well. You know, if you don't have a lot of range, you're not going to do Breach well. If you don't move incredibly fast, you're not going to do Breach well. Just kind of an annoying mechanic to me, so not something that's for everyone. I do think this could net you more XP per hour with Delirium. I think that's the easiest one to slap on. Just slap in some Delirium mirrors or maybe a Delirium orb. Gives you more guys to kill, but it is really ugly, and the chances of death are a lot higher, which can definitely set you back. It also means you're going to clear slower due to Delirium giving everything damage reduction, so not really my favorite. Also, from my testing earlier on in the league, I found that Beyond wasn't really all that much faster, at least in my experience. Your mileage may vary from mine, that's fine, but I was actually a little disappointed by Beyond. Beyond that, fun, I find Beyond to be a pretty annoying league mechanic, just like, it makes you stop and kill guys a lot, and I kind of like zooming through maps, generally speaking, so I wasn't a huge fan, but you might like it, so I would say try it out for yourself if you're curious, and go with it if you like it, and don't go with it if you don't. Now as for Harbinger and Breach, I find them to be a bit slower and more tedious since you have to stand around and wait for the monsters to spawn with Harbingers, and you have to actually run into the Breach hands and then run around and kill everything that's inside them when you're doing Breach. There's definitely more money-making potential with either of these two mechanics, and they can work really well, but they do require a lot more brain power, a lot more attention, so they're not really my preferred method. I kind of like being able to, like, it's October right now, I like being able to slap on a spooky movie, kind of pay attention to the game, but also kind of watch a movie and just sort of go through and very easily kill everything. Ultimately, because of that, I have just leaned into Domination, and it is a super simple setup. Now, there is one other thing I want to point out before jumping into that, and that will require talking to Faustus, and that is Omens. There are two really valuable Omens for leveling up. Not so much Omen of the Soul Devourer, although it is something you can use in leveling up pretty cheap, but I think Omen of Brilliance, when you're in the kind of lower levels, like 70 up to 90, you can slap an Omen of Brilliance on, go clear through a map. These are generally more used in getting 5-way carries. They can be useful for playing for yourself, you know, actually playing the game, and that is kind of my intention with any sort of XP strategy, but, you know, it's very easy to say just go get carried. Boring, you're not playing the game, don't really enjoy it myself. So Omens of Brilliance can be okay as an option for lower levels, but I would say Omens of Amelioration are really the more important one for those higher levels. Anywhere from like 95 to 100, I like to have an Omen of Amelioration on hand. You know, you're only given one Omen per area, so I would say, like, if you die and it felt like a fluke death, and you don't feel like there's a real decent shot that you're going to die again in that zone, then jump back in there. But if you die, like, on, you know, I don't know, something bad, like a reflect or something, and you have a feeling like you're going to die in there again, I would say don't go back into that map with an Omen of Amelioration if you think there's any chance of dying again, because now instead of losing 2.5% of a level in that map, not terrible, I mean, obviously not good, but not terrible, you can make that up in a handful of minutes. Now you're looking at 12.5% of a level lost between two deaths. That's going to set you back an hour, maybe not a full hour, but definitely it's going to set you back quite a bit, and it's going to be pretty frustrating, bad for your mental. So I would just say use the Omen kind of as like a get out of jail, get out of death, mostly free card, but also a get out of that map and just eat the loss and go to another map if you do die. That's all assuming that you're really interested in maximizing your XP gains, since that is kind of the point of this whole video, right? So in terms of the Atlas passive setup, I'm actually just using my, like, classic quote-unquote back to basics setup, where it is just all the domination nodes, all of them, all the map mod nodes I can get, map mod effect. I'm not taking Chisel Perfection because I was using Corrupted 8 mod maps. I did this across a handful of different maps. I mostly did Dunes, and I did find that to be the best map. I was pulling down around 55 million XP per hour doing Dunes, just blasting through Dunes. It's a very easy, wide open layout. I tried a couple of other maps like Jungle Valley. I thought I was getting about 50 million right on the dot, and then doing a couple of others like Toxic Sewer and Mesa, which I really love. They're definitely maps I'm a huge fan of, but I found that I actually got a little bit less than 50 million per hour in those maps. It was something more like 45 to 48, which is, you know, when you're comparing that to 50 to 55 million XP per hour, 48 is less. You're losing about 8 to 10% XP per hour by running those inferior maps. So I would say, similarly speaking, you want to have as many map mods as you can on each map. So running corrupted 8 mod maps is definitely better than just chiseling and alking maps. Now, if you're willing to chisel, alk, and vol them and try to be 20% quality corrupted 8 mod maps, then it's worth taking chisel perfection, but otherwise it isn't. And the reason we want all this map mod effect, we have the top hat from here to here, between these 3 points, all of that, and then these 2 little skinny antennas pointed toward heaven. All of this stuff up at the top gives us more pack size. It also gives us more quant and rarity, and that's good, right? Like, this is a decent scarab farming strategy as well, just generic stuff. You get a lot of currency, a lot of scarabs, and it's very cheap. So it's actually a pretty decent basic farm strat on top of being really good for XP. But the main point here really is just simply having more pack size. So I do like taking invasive adversaries. That's more guys to kill. And then the big thing that's really fueling the amount of guys that we have in our maps is really 2 different things. It's a combination of drawn to power, which gives you an extra or 50% chance for an extra pack of monsters on each shrine, and then a guaranteed magic pack on each shrine. And then we're also taking all of these small passives for, I'm doing Eater of Worlds. You can definitely do this with Searing Exarch as well. Either is completely fine. Really just depends on what you're wanting to farm and your build. And then we're just taking all of these small passives that give increased pack size. So all of these combined, this is 20 in these 4 nodes and 20 in these 4, 40% more pack size, or I should say increased pack size on your Eater of Worlds or Searing Exarch mobs. That's pretty good. You are getting between, I wrote this all down somewhere, you are getting around 11 or 12 shrines in every single map. So with Drawn to Power, and then all the scarabs that we're running, you are getting 15 to 20 extra packs of monsters in each map thanks to Drawn to Power, and then about 11 or 12 of those at least are going to be magic packs. And then I'll talk about scarabs in a minute, but those are all going to get 40% extra pack size for monstrous lineage scarabs. So you're going to get a lot of extra monsters in your maps from those shrines. I think this is the reason why Jungle Valley isn't quite as good, is Jungle Valley can be kind of narrow and it can sometimes squeeze out mechanics. So even if you're guaranteed to have 12 shrines in a Jungle Valley, if it kind of spawns badly, you might only get 10 shrines or something. You might just lose some. Now, with all this being said, as you can see, this definitely isn't optimized toward XP per hour. Again, it's kind of optimized towards like chillness, which isn't really something that's super quantifiable. But just kind of looking at some of these nodes here, like if we just look at this node, this one, and this one, everything that's connected to those, I think it's about 19 points, is purely devoted to Scarab drop chance. There's a lot of other stuff devoted toward Scarab drop chance as well that I'm putting in. Lots of these 2 small passives here, 2 here. I'm taking, 4 blocker nodes here and 3 here, and then obviously the connecting nodes to get to them. There's a lot of optimization towards scarabs. Not necessary, right? You can definitely not do any of this. It'll probably free you up about 30 something points, maybe more if you drop some quantity, and you could put that into Beyond, for example. I would probably go towards Swarming Hive and then do a map that has good divination cards on it. The main thing you want to emphasize if you are doing Beyond is make sure to take Endless Tide, and also make sure that you have 100% chance to spawn Beyond from your small passives, because there is a 0% chance for Beyond to spawn in your maps by default. Unlike most League mechanics that have a baseline of 8, Beyond is 0, so you do have to actually guarantee it through small passives in the tree, but that's pretty easy to do. I think one of the main reasons I don't love Beyond, other than just kind of slowing you down, is that it does require a lot of point investment. But if you drop all these Scarab nodes, you can definitely afford that. The same would go for Harbinger. Harbinger's quite a bit cheaper. I would take every single Harbinger node if I were going to do Harbinger. Nothing wrong with that. And then I think the other really good ones are, again, you can guarantee Delirium and then take like Unending Nightmare if you want to make it easy and not be rushing. You won't get any orbs, so that's a little annoying, but it'll just guarantee there are more guys in your maps. That's an option. Or you can go more in a breach direction, just kind of take pretty much all of the breach nodes, especially stuff like Within Their Grasp and Eve of Invasion. Just give yourself like more reward for doing breaches, but also, which node is it? I believe it is Evolving Hives. Does really, really well for breach. It gives you a lot more magic and rare monsters. Some of the small passives on the way to Evolving Hives give you more magic monsters. And so you can just get lots and lots of breaches. Definitely works really well on dunes, which is a good map for this strategy. Definitely an approach I've done in the past. The reason I'm not doing it right now, I just found it a little boring. You know, it's kind of less fun and maybe a little bit more expensive, but definitely less fun than just kind of slamming through shrines over and over again. And shrines are fun because you can get acceleration shrines or massive shrines and just be really, really strong and fast and just clear through a map in like 90 seconds or less very easily. And that is a really satisfying gameplay loop that obviously does give you a lot of XP. Now, in terms of the Scarabs that I'm using, it's a really simple setup. There's not really a lot of options when it comes to Domination Scarabs anymore, and that's okay. We are just using this combination of Scarabs. We're using 2 regular Domination Scarabs just kind of to fill things up. 2 Evolution Scarabs, 2 Domination Scarabs of Evolution. This is really kind of the magic here, the secret sauce of this strategy. And then the other one would be just a Monstrous Lineage, pretty basic, just for more magic pack size, pretty simple stuff mechanically. And so this would be our 5 Scarabs, 2 Doms, 2 Evolutions, and a Monstrous Lineage. If you wanted to do another kind of strategy, I would still keep the Evolution Scarabs in. I would still keep some investment in Domination. I think it's really good, but I would probably just drop the 2 regular Domination Scarabs if I were going to do any sort of other adding in another mechanic, and then I would put those 2 Scarabs toward that other mechanic. The only exception here maybe would be if I were doing Breach. I think I would really try to full invest in Breach, and so I'd probably just keep 1 Evolution Shrine and then commit all the rest of my stuff over to Breach. Now, the thing about Domination Scarabs of Evolution, what makes them so good, if we just kind of look at it on the wiki, is it gives you evolving shrines, and when you have that buff on you, you have a 5% chance to revive enemies as a higher rarity tier when you kill them, and that just means normal monsters, instead of just dying and being dead, would turn into a magic monster. Magic monsters give more XP than normal monsters, and then again, that can happen with magics evolving up to a rare. Also, more XP. This more or less means kind of like 5% more pack size. It is sort of recursive, I guess. You know, a monster hypothetically could evolve from normal to magic and then magic to rare. Not a huge chance of that happening. You know, it's 0.05 times 0.05. Pretty low chance, but non-zero. And then, you know, this just also kind of interacts with all of the other sources of more monsters in the map and pack size and so on to just give you a lot more dudes to kill. It's kind of like a simpler version of Beyond, where you just get another guy added into the map when you kill stuff. It does have good synergy with Beyond, so I think there's definitely value in doing it there. Again, I just didn't do Beyond because I just don't love it, but I do think it could be better. If you are somebody who enjoys Beyond, that is the first thing I would recommend playing around with if you wanted to kind of push the XP amount even higher. That is where I would start, and then everything else I would kind of play around with after. You know, Delirium, Breach, that sort of thing, I think would all come second to Beyond. See if you can stomach it, and then kind of go from there. Now, just in terms of like notes on what I'm doing here, I was kind of going through the edit and realized like there are just a couple little things I wanted to add in. First of all, I do think it is good to try to get an Evolution Shrine before you get started, but I mean, in the interest of chillness, I really was just kind of clearing, and then once I saw an Evolution Shrine, I would run over to it. I wasn't like running around the map not killing anything until I could find an Evolution Shrine. I think ultimately, if you try to do it like that, you might die. You might just wind up wasting so much time running around looking that it doesn't really work out that well for you. I do kind of like a toll for any domination strategy, because a toll has a tendency to spawn like 2 to 5 domination shrines right toward the entrance, which is pretty cool. But you can do this on any map. You can do this really in any way, and I think the best approach is just to like very smoothly clear through the map, and then once it's cleared, you leave, and you just kind of hope you get the Evolution Shrines early on in the map rather than later on in the map. The only other thing I would say that I wanted to make sure I mention is just simply do run Domination on the map device, unless you're doing some other strategy like Breach. But I think Domination is definitely the approach. I also would not give up the magic pack size Scarab. I think that Monstrous Lineage is just really good. There's so many magic monsters and maps. I think that pack size is huge, has great synergy with everything, especially with Drawn to Power. Really, really good value there. Ultimately, I think that's kind of it. I didn't really pay attention to how much I was getting per map in terms of currency. It felt like a good amount, but again, I just wasn't really tracking it. I was kind of playing around with stuff, experimenting here and there, and so, didn't really feel like I was going to get any good useful data on currency per hour amounts, but that's probably something fun to play around with too, see how much you can optimize your currency per hour versus XP and kind of balance between those as you like. In any case, I think this is a pretty strong base strategy for farming XP. Very smooth and fun, right? I think there's definitely room to move things around and make it more your own based on your personal preferences, or you can just keep it exactly as I have it and stay super simple and just get more Scarab drops and just purely focus on domination, which I do think is the most fun approach. All right, it had initially written in my outro that we're a couple of weeks out from PoE 2 early access. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem like it's the case. I guess it's more like a month and a half. I'm not exactly sure what or when the plan is going to be for the next PoE 1 league. Maybe that'll drop before then. I doubt it, but my guess would be that it's probably not going to happen. Initially, I was thinking it wouldn't happen until December. Now I'm thinking it probably won't happen until January. So I do think that means this probably has some legs. This league has a lot more time left in it than I think a lot of people expected. That's okay, right? I think this league is pretty solid, and I'm just going to keep enjoying it as we continue kind of waiting to see what comes next from GGG. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching, and have fun leveling up. Bye.